Well, hello there. It's Dad, and I'm here again with another episode of Dad, I Want to Hear Your Story. I need to apologize. It's been 2 months since I made a video, and well, I have no excuse. I could make something up, but it really doesn't matter. I just got lazy. Not like I don't have the time to do it, I just got lazy and didn't do it. So, no worries, we're back in the saddle and got you another video. So, the last video, I will remind you, we left off with the question, what are the biggest differences in how kids were raised today and when you were young? So I left off with, talking about no social media. So I figured before I go on to the next question, I did have some notes here about the differences between how I was raised and perhaps how you were raised. So I figured I'd highlight a few of them. So the last thing I left on this page was we were never allowed a rot day. And my daughter Julianne has termed that, Dad, I just want to have a rot day. And I'm like, what's a rot day? Well, you just sit on the couch, watch TV all day, and do absolutely nothing. And I am here to tell you that growing up in the Kimball household, that was that was a foreign concept. There was never such a thing as a rot day. The closest thing we ever got to a rot day was a rot morning, and that was Saturday mornings. Mom and Dad would allow us, the Saturday morning cartoons because that was the only time that cartoons were on TV was Saturday morning. So, you'd get up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and man, you'd hit the TV running, and between channel 2, 4, 7, that was it, 2, 4, and 7 you would watch whatever cartoons you wanted to watch. And then I'd say by 9, 10 o'clock, rot day was over and get yourself outside, go do something. Or there's chores to be done, there's work to be done. There was always something to do. So, yeah, we didn't have rot days. And I think, I can't speak for all of the children in the world today, but I'm sure that there's many a day where they have rot days, whereas we didn't. I kind of briefly talked about we lived in a little bubble, because that kind of went with the whole social media thing. You only knew what was going on in your town, in your neighborhood, maybe the state, on a national level. Just if you didn't hear it on the radio and you didn't read it in the local newspaper, you didn't know what was going on in the world. So it was kind of nice because you didn't have to worry about, or you didn't have the social media pressures that we have. So, yeah, without social media, without the internet, there was little pressure when it came to social issues. Gosh, no cell phone. I remember when we got our first answering machine at home. So think about this. You're growing up from the very first memories of being a child all through your high school days. First of all, you only had one phone, maybe two phones in your house. So in the house that I grew up in, we had a phone that was kind of between the kitchen and the family room. Phone hanging on the wall, long, 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 long 10 to 12 foot phone cord that would always get all wound up and stuck. And that was it. And my parents did have one in their bedroom. So, if they got a phone call late at night and they were in bed, they didn't have to get up. They had a phone there. But, and for the longest time, you didn't have an answering machine. So when the phone rang, and you didn't have caller ID. So when the phone rang, it was like Russian roulette with the phone. Who's calling? You have no idea. It could be a friend, it could be a tax collector, it could be a sales call, whatever it is, right? You had no idea. And it's interesting just to think about with no cell phones, when you were outside of your house, that was it. You were free. If you called somebody and they didn't answer the phone, you could assume two things to be true. First thing is they're home and they're just not answering the phone because they don't feel like it. Or B, they're out. They could, they're just not home. And that was usually it. Oh, they're not home. They're not home. Well, they could be home, but chances are they weren't home because when the phone rang, you generally answered it. And then came the answering machine. And I remember, we got an answering machine for Christmas, and oh my gosh, Dad set up the hi, this is the Kimball residence, or you've dialed 973-383-9960. At the tone, leave a message. And it was pretty neat. And you come home and you see that little blinky light. You're like, oh, I got a phone call. I got a message. So you had this feeling growing up of being out of touch. You had freedom. You weren't tied to a phone where somebody could get to you all the time. Unless you experienced it, you wouldn't have any idea what it feels like. Well, think about it today. You have a phone, right? You have a smartphone. Leave it at home. Go out and spend the day outside of the house without your phone. And how does that make you feel? We never felt that because we never had it in the first place. We didn't know what it was like to have a phone and then not have one, right? It's just this interesting whole dynamic. No internet. So obviously no internet growing up. No internet meant school was so much harder. Typing. Oh my gosh. I remember taking a typing class as a freshman in high school, as many of my peers did. And you had the old style typewriters with the push keys in it, and you really had to press the key down, and the little arm came up and hit the paper with the ribbon. And the hardest letter to type was the letter A because it was on your pinky. Now, interesting little tidbit of history here. The keyboard that you are used to typing on today, it's called the QWERTY. QWERTY, and it's called the QWERTY because the first line there on the top. And, the letter A, which is a vowel, which you type constantly, is on the pinky, which is the little finger without the most muscle. You would think A would be on your pointer fingers, right? Well, the keyboard is designed because at the time, the keys that would come up and they would have to strike, the paper, and they would get jammed. If you tried to type too fast and like you hit an A and an E, or an A and an R, an A and T really quickly, the keys would come up at the same time and they would get jammed, and you'd have to take your finger and, kind of nick it off. So the keyboard was designed to slow you down. It was designed to make you not type as fast so the keys wouldn't get stuck. And it stuck. So here we are in 2026 with keyboards and computers. Nobody uses a manual typewriter anymore, but nobody has learned in school like the Dvorak keyboard or some of the other keyboard layouts that put those other, the vowels and R and T and L and S and E, they put them on these fingers. Interesting little piece of history, right? So in high school, having to write a term paper when you're a senior in high school, I wrote mine on toxic waste, by the way, and I actually kind of plagiarized it. I'll admit this. Everybody dreaded writing the term paper, and the guy that had the class before me, I paid him, I don't know if I paid him like $10 or $20, and he gave me his term paper, and I basically used kind of the same format. I didn't plagiarize the whole thing because you couldn't plagiarize the whole thing and get away with it. But I used a lot of his research and a lot of the format and what he was talking about, and I just rewrote the paper myself. But I did it on toxic waste and the history of toxic waste and how it's stored and the different types and blah 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 blah. But the point of differences between you and me is typing the term paper. Imagine having to type 6 to 10 pages of a paper with no mistakes. And if you make a mistake, you're trying to put the whiteout on there and fix it. Oh, and God forbid you made a mistake and somebody proofread it and went mistake, 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 and you had to type the whole thing over again. It was the biggest anxiety thing as a senior in high school, having to type a term paper. Nowadays, you don't even think, my gosh, you could type a term paper on your phone with your thumbs, send it to somebody, spell check. My gosh, you could be stupid and type a term paper because you can type something wrong and spell check it. How many times do you type today where you just accidentally misspell a word, not because you don't know how to spell the word, but you just typed it incorrectly and it went, oh, autocorrect. It didn't even bother to tell you that you made a mistake. It just fixed it for you. So let me tell you, kids, you don't have no idea how good you have it when it comes to technology and being a teenager and or adult. You have no idea how good you have it. And then let's see. So that was typing, high school. Oh, internet. Another thing with the internet and just high school in general. You probably don't even know what it's like to go to the library, search through the card catalog, search through microfiche. So if you were doing a paper on toxic waste, whatever, you have to do a research paper on something. Going to the card catalog, manually searching for articles that might have that keyword that you're looking for, going and finding the article on microfiche, which is basically like this little plastic film, and everything was it's all like a copy, but it's so tiny that you have to read it with a machine that like makes it big. Google what a microfiche machine looks like, and you'll see. So then you're putting this plastic card on a little tray, and you're moving the tray with your hand while it comes up on the screen so you could see the article. You couldn't even copy and paste. You had to sit there and then write down what it said on the microfiche to be able to then type it in a paper. Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea how hard that was to do that type of research paper, to do that type of looking up stuff. And of course, there was no Google. There was no nothing. You have no idea. Anyway, and then the last thing about the differences was we had deadly toys. I am kidding you not. We had toys like lawn darts. Google this. What is a lawn dart? How many kids were killed or how many people were killed with lawn darts and when were they banned? So a lawn dart was this big plastic steel pointed dart. It was like about this long, had a pointy steel point on it and big plastic fins. And what you would do is you would set up a hula hoop, two hula hoops in your yard, and you would throw these lawn darts in the air, kind of like lob them, and try and get them to stick in the ground inside that hoop. So that's the basic premise of the lawn dart game. Well, you give it to a bunch of 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, and they take the game to a whole new level. You would throw these at people, you would throw them up in the air, and then, ready for this, try and catch it before it hit the ground. So here's this heavy steel dart falling through the sky. You're chasing after it, and you have to try and grab it before it hits the ground. You used to play chicken with the lawn dart. Stand still, and somebody would throw this dart at you, and they would try and land as close to you as possible without it actually hitting you. Hence, people were killed. Children actually died playing lawn darts. So we had toys that could kill you. And then there was another toy called Kabangers, K-A hyphen bangers, Bangers. Look that up on YouTube. There was these extremely hard acrylic, plastic, or ceramic balls. They were about the size, maybe they were about the size of a golf ball. And they were on a string and they were attached to a handle. So you'd have this handle like this with the rope or the string with these two balls on them. And as you did this, the balls would kank, 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 and then you'd get that motion like this going really, really fast, and the balls would go kabang, 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 kabang. And then the object was how long could you stand there and do this motion while these things went kabang, 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 kabang. So look it up on YouTube, you'll see it. Well, you do it wrong and the ball starts flying and it whacks you on the hand or on your arm, or you got it too close and you smacked yourself in the head with it. Those things hurt. So we had toys like lawn darts, like kabangers. Yeah, they could either cause serious harm and or kill you. So very, very, very different childhood. Our life was in jeopardy when we were kids because the toys that we had were dangerous. Well, okay, so what is the time here? 14 minutes. Okay. I am going to just spend a minute or so going through the next section. And this next section says it's called Becoming and Being a Dad, right? What was the last section? The last section was, oh no, it's still the same one. But the topic now is what are the best and hardest parts of being a father? So let's start with the best. The best is getting asked for advice. And I still ask my dad for advice. So yeah, when I became a father, you don't get asked advice as much as when your children are older. But now that all of my children are adults, I do take great satisfaction when I get a call and it's, hey, dad. And by the way, I do love being called dad. That is, I didn't write that, but the best part of being a father is being called dad. It just is, because you know what the term means. And when your children say, hey, dad, I just love that. Anyway, so I love it when my kids call me up and they say, hey, dad, how how do I do this? Or even better, what do you think about this? Here's this situation in my life. It could be on any topic. It could be a financial. It could be a relationship. It could be your opinion on something. It could be whatever. The fact that my children will call me asking advice, it makes me feel good. It makes me think that my children, while they think I'm goofy sometimes, and I can be goofy and silly, they value my opinion. My words to them, my sage wisdom is valued. And that is definitely a good part of being a father. The next thing I wrote, seeing your children laugh with you at any age. So, obviously when your children are infants and then they go to baby and then they go to toddler, and they start to learn to laugh and to giggle, and then they're learning to walk, and then you play games with them and then they laugh. There's so much joy in seeing your children especially at a little age, laugh, not laugh at you. Yes, if you're doing something silly and I'm chasing them and I'm acting like a monster or making funny faces or whatever, they're laughing at me. But then that transitions to getting older, and then they laugh with you, whether it's you're watching a funny movie, you're watching something that's funny, you're being together and being silly together. Having your children laugh with you is joyful. You can't. I could not put into words how that makes me feel when I see my children laugh. The next thing I wrote is knowing your children trust you. And that kind of goes back to the advice thing. But, as a father, you look at your children when they're born and you're raising them. My daughters, Erica, Julianne, Faith, they trust you as a man, right? They look at you and they trust you. They know that you have their best interest in heart, that you will always be there to protect them. You will never guide them wrong. And knowing that your children trust you is wonderful. And I would imagine for me, it is the same whether it's my daughters or my son. Mark and Michael, you know, I believe that you trust me, and I think you do, that that I would never steer you wrong. I would never do wrong by you. That I always have your best interest at heart. And knowing that your children trust you, it is a wonderful feeling that you bestow on me as a father, as a dad, right? Because in this crazy world that we live in, you don't know who to trust, right? You trust in the Lord. You absolutely positively know that God our Savior is sovereign over us. He loves us, and we trust him. It, hands down, we trust him. And although I don't know if our children trust their fathers the same, I kind of think that they trust me, and just knowing that they trust me is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. Um, and then the last thing, I'm at 20 minutes, but I'll answer the last one. The best part about being a father, seeing joy through their eyes. So, I mean, and I'll get to memories later because there's the next question was talk about memories. But I have so many memories of just seeing my children do something and seeing the joy in their eyes whenever it is, whether it was a vacation, a thing that they did, a thing that they made, whatever it was, the joy and the satisfaction that they experienced as a father, I experienced it as well for them and through them. Because I helped guide them, I helped raise them, I helped lead them, I helped do all of the things that a dad does. And the joy that they experienced through life and whatever they did, that's kind of sort of a little bit a reflection on me. And it's wonderful to experience that joy through their eyes, whether it's their 2 or 3 years old seeing a waterfall for the first time, or as an adult just experiencing something in life for the first time, or the millionth time. Whatever brings your children joy, it brings joy to me as well. So, with that, I'm going to leave at that part. The next video, and hopefully it won't be too long before I make another one, I'm going to talk about the hardest part about being a father. So, until then, like the kids say, like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon, okay? Bye.